Hi, I'm Josh, the Dad of Hobbies. Today's hobby, the wonderful, magnificent, incredibly talented, award-winning comic artist, Yale Stewart, who has joined me here today in his limited free time, which I very much appreciate. So welcome, Yale. Thanks for being on the channel today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure is truly mine because uh, uh, your work overall is extraordinary, but in particular, the JL8 work that you've done, it's got to be what, decades, at least over a decade now at this point.
Yeah, I did the first one in the summer of 2011. Um, and then really kind of started working on it with any degree of sort of like purpose in 2012. But yeah, so yeah, that's, 13, 14 years now, which is real weird. Real
Yes.
weird.
Well, the amount that you've put out in that time, and certainly the quality of the storytelling, not to mention the art, is incredible. So, for those that don't know, JL8 is essentially the Justice League if they were 8-year-olds. And so, instead of going to fight, uh, giant starfish, sometimes you'll see them on a Boy Scout trip, or you'll see them going to school. Now, you do have the space monster and occasional battle scene in here too, but the focus on the characters as kids, where did that idea come from?
I wish it was a cooler story. It really was. The very short answer is that it just kinda popped in there. So, one day, I was at work at my dad's warehouse. I don't know what I was listening to or what was, like, going on, but I kinda had this idea of a young Superman not fully kinda like a puppy, right? Where puppies or any small animal, like, their paws are a little too big, they don't quite know their strength, yada, yada. And I had this idea of him trying to be helpful and like push other kids on the swing set and accidentally, launching them great distances. And I was like, oh, that's kind of like a funny gag. And it really was sort of one of those things where, once the floodgate opened, not to use a cliche, but like the stories kind of write themselves a little bit. After I had the Superman idea, a couple like Batman ones came to mind, some Wonder Woman ones, and very quickly built on itself. Like, well, if I've already got the big three, is there a way to like expand it out to the Justice League as a whole? Oh, what if they're not, superheroes? What if they're a class of children? Only aided by the fact that I was and am a very large fan of Arthur the Aardvark, the Mark Brown children's book series and longtime PBS kids show. And people would like reblog it and share it, and I remember hitting the first 100 followers and being like, "Oh my god, like this is crazy! 100 people who I don't personally know are choosing to follow this thing or whatever." And then yeah, 14 years later, here we are.
And it's wonderful. Your comment about it being like Arthur. What comes to my mind is Charlie Brown or Calvin and Hobbes, right? All of those classic kid.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all the good ones are kind of cut roughly from the same cloth, right? Which is they touch on a period of life that virtually all of us have experienced. Childhood is like the most universal touchstone for everybody, right? To me, that was kind of like the through line is that you treat the children with respect, dignity. You don't. I mean, they're characters, but you're not like condescending to them. Certainly not to the readership, because I mean, JLA is intended to be an all ages thing.
It's clear that you are taking that motif seriously. That this is, to use your term, all ages, right? But it is meant to make the characters relatable for the folks who know them well, the adults who've been reading for years, and make them accessible for children. Handing a child the latest issue of Action Comics or Detective might not be as easy for them to get into as a JL8 webcomic. So your inspiration obviously comes from the characters that you're using, the children's comic and references that we've already talked about. For the stories, are you continuously just pulling from life, pulling from versions of comic book stories that you can de-age a bit, or are you finding that writing those characters as children is difficult to do because you can't just go make them all do a Crisis on Infinite Earths type of thing?
I don't think I'd actually really consider it that much. I don't really pull from any, at least not yet. And that's not me saying that I have any plans to. I'm just saying. But I haven't really ever pulled from any sort of like pre-existing comic story, at least not that I'm aware of. Um but yeah, most of it I'm either pulling from lived experience from my own childhood or anecdotes that friends have shared about their childhoods. Because like I was never in the scouts. Both of my brothers were, and a decent number of my close friends were. Um, and I won't pretend to have any great knowledge about the scouts. But it was enough to kind of know, like, oh, like that could be a fun take on the Green Lantern Corps. Is because colloquially, the adult Green Lantern Corps, we refer to them as like they're DC's intergalactic cops or whatever, right? Like, what's sort of the youth equivalent of a police force or whatever? And the scouts are not police, but there's certainly kind of like a pipeline there in terms of maybe like general ideas or values or whatever.
When it comes to actually putting one of the strips out, so you
Mhm.
have an idea, you saw some kids playing, or you saw this funny thing that your friends told you. You now have a story idea. From story idea to final, I'm hitting publish. What is that process?
Messy. So I'll start with the idea, and yeah, I'll basically just start to refine it. So we'll use JL8 number 270, basically this graphic novel that I've been working on for the last longer than I'd care to admit. Um, the idea is, okay, after John enters Bruce's mind and kind of pulls up the memory of his parents, Bruce gets really upset, is found by Clark. Clark invites him to spend the night back at the house to try to help him recover from this traumatic experience. What's that sleepover going to be like? Break it down by like chapter, right? Like what are the kind of like broad stroke events of what that'll look like? So, at first they arrive home, right? Then maybe they go up to Clark's room to get settled in. Maybe there's a discussion about what had happened, and Bruce is kind of deflective about it. Okay, Bruce doesn't want to talk about it. Then what do they do to, pass the time? Okay, maybe they go downstairs and play video games or something. And then, okay, then, as the evening progresses, then Pa Kent comes home. What happens then? Okay, so then from there, now it's like time to start actually dialoguing that out. Like, what do all these characters say to each other? Yada, yada, yada. How does Clark convey to Ma Kent in kind of like a code that Bruce has to stay over here? Oh, he says that Bruce is staying over, not can Bruce stay over, right? Because it's not optional. And then once I finally have the dialogue, then I start going into thumbnails, trying to figure out like, okay, what does this panel look like? What does that panel look like? How many lines of dialogue fit into this image that I have? Like, could this Clark statement, Ma statement, Clark statement, Ma statement, could all four of those statements be one panel? Do they need to be, four individual panels? What's important? Do we need to see you know, a close up of a face to sell the emotion of this line, or can it kind of just be like, oh, look at just all them together, yada yada yada. Once all that gets hammered out, then it goes to the drawing table where pencil, ink, scan it in, color, post.
Is that all?
So
That's it. That's all it takes, huh?
yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Once you have that story, once you've storyboarded it out in your head, as you described, do you feel it's easier to draw? or is the process of getting that story there, even as complicated as it is, easier because then you have to spend all this time and effort drawing and penning pen to paper and coloring and all that stuff.
It's different kinds of hard and easy, right? Like thumbnailing is obviously easier in the sense that like it's just like chicken scratch or whatever, but trying to think of like what will be the right image and, iterating time and again trying to figure out like, okay, is this the image I want or is that the image I want? Well, I like this image, but it would be hard to get that image in a panel that would fit with all these other panels on the page. Like there are all these kind of like moving pieces. Um, so it can be hard, but I mean, sitting down and actually drawing the thing is still sitting down and actually drawing the thing, and that's the part when I talk about how like the page takes 20 to 30 hours. That is exclusively the part that I'm referring to. Like I'm not even counting the writing, the thumbnailing, all that stuff. It is exclusively the like time sitting at the drawing table, pencil in hand, rulers in hand, yada yada yada.
Has DC shown any interest, or have you tried to reach out to them about it?
I've talked to them a couple times about it. I don't think saying that they've had interest would be a terribly honest assessment of it. I mean, they definitely know about it. And I've talked to a couple editors over there, and they've never been outright like, no, this is bad, we don't want it, or whatever. But they've also obviously never been like, yeah, like let's talk, let's make this work, and that's fine. In fact, in a lot of ways, I think that it makes perfect sense. I don't really hold it against them. But yeah, now it really boils down to like, I really enjoy making it. I don't need to get rich making it, but if I can make it and keep my head above water, then I'll just keep making it as long as I can because it brings me a lot of joy doing it. Mostly because it seems to bring joy to a lot of the people who read it. I take a lot of pride in that. I think, how do I want to articulate this? If you are able to do a thing that makes people happy, I think that's a gift and that you should lean into it and try to do as much with that as you're able to do.
I'm curious, why only DC and Justice League? Why not do a Marvel like an Eight Avengers or something?
Really, the only reason it was Justice League is because that was the idea that initially popped in there, with Superman. And I just took it and I ran with it. I'm not trying to say that I have no affection for the Justice League or anything, but it was not a comic spurned specifically out of love for the Justice League. It was a comic spurned out of this seems like a funny idea, and it happens to be featuring the Justice League. Had Marvel hit me up and been like, "Hey, we see that DC isn't picking you up. Would you like to do that over here with the Avengers or something?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure." But yeah, no, one free comic at a time.
On the topic of free, while you're actually having a sale for your prints, for your original art, right? You are, I know, looking to um, bring in some income from it. While it is an act of love, obviously you want to be able to live your life, to be able to do it, and we as your fans want to support you. So, what is the easiest way for folks to find the stuff you're selling?
Patreon is definitely the biggest one, and you can just find me at patreon.com/Yale Stewart. But then the sale, yeah, so the sale, I'm offering 50% off all the mass produced merchandise. So that's like prints, buttons, I mean, there's still prints, but like little postcards, stuff like that. And then 30% off original art. So the actual JL8 pages, as well as any kind of like original art for like prints that I've done or something like that. And all that is currently available at yalestewart.bigcartel.com. planning on running the sale all the way through the end of the year. I will be opening up commissions, and I'm also going to be doing that through the Big Cartel page.
In terms of what's next for you, right? Obviously, the sale hopefully will help bring in the opportunity for you to continue your work. JL8 is clearly the passion project, but it's not the only thing you do. Do you have things that you're working on that are either upcoming, or are there places that we can find your work beyond just the JL8 comic?
I mean, truthfully, there's not really a whole lot that I'm actively working on outside of JL8 right now. Pretty much all over the general social media stuff, on Instagram, Yale Stewart. I'm on Blue Sky, again, Yale Stewart. Uh, JL8 lives kind of in both of those places, as well as the Facebook page and the Tumblr page for JL8. I've got this like fantasy adventure comic that I've sort of been working on called Forward the Horizon. You can actually find a free PDF preview of that on my Gumroad, uh, gumroad.com/Yale Stewart. Kind of working on JL8, working on the Forward the Horizon, and kind of just keeping myself open for any opportunities that might come my way.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate you walking us through this. As Yale said, you can find him at yalestewart.bigcartel.com. That's where his sale is currently going on. Definitely follow him across whatever social works best for the JL8. And if you are so inclined, his Patreon would certainly appreciate your support as well. Yale, thank you again for joining me. Thanks for being today's hobby. And for those of you listening to this, like, follow, subscribe to see what hobby we get into next.